This is something France just simply hasn't seen before. When you're out talking to people in the streets and you're covering things like demonstrations, one thing you really feel is no matter what side of politics they're on, everyone's really quite scared of the uncertainty. We could be facing a fragmented parliament, we could have people in power that have never been in power before. I'm Natacha Butler, Paris correspondent, and between us, I am worried the divisions we're seeing in France are only going to get bigger.
French President Emmanuel Macron's move to hold a snap parliamentary election is being seen as either a brave political decision or a highly dangerous gamble.
Well, it was a huge surprise that President Macron would take such a gamble, even though it's very much in his style. Now, in this case, he was obviously hoping that his centrist party would win a parliamentary majority, but it seems that things certainly are not going that way. And the main risk for him now is his legacy, because he might go down in the history books in France as the president who allowed the far right to take power in France for the first time. Like most people, I wasn't surprised by the results of the first round in the snap election, mainly because opinion polls had predicted them so accurately in previous weeks that the far right would come in the lead. Perhaps the most interesting thing that came out of that first round was just how well the leftist alliance did, considering it's an alliance that had only been cobbled together, scrambled together in just a few weeks, and includes such a disparate array of left-wing parties, from communists, Greens to Socialists. The far right have always been lurking on the margins of French politics, for decades. In recent years, what we've really seen is the far right surge under Emmanuel Macron, almost as a kind of a response to Emmanuel Macron. When you're out at demonstrations, when you're out talking to people who vote for the far right, they'll almost nearly always say that they really despise Emmanuel Macron and everything he represents. To them, he represents an urban elite. So you've got Marine Le Pen, who's just rebranded herself and made herself look as if she is somebody in touch with people. She rebranded her party, given it a new look, even a new name. It used to be called the National Front. It's now the National Rally. And she's distanced the party away from its roots. But no matter what Le Pen says, her party's platform remains very much far right. It is anti-immigration and it is deeply Eurosceptic. But it appeals to a wide number of people. Marine Le Pen needed someone fresh and new to attract more voters, and that is why she's reached out to Bardell. He is hoping to become France's first far-right prime minister. He really appeals to young voters. Many people are saying that he is like a TikTok politician for this whole new generation of far-right voters. And when we've been to rallies and we've seen Bardell on stage, what's really interesting is how much the demographics have changed of the people at those rallies. It used to be much older voters. Now we're seeing a lot of young people, a lot of teenagers, and they are there for Bardell. We were out with one young man who's 24 years old. He is campaigning for the far right, and he said, this is time for France to get back France. He feels that French values have been destroyed by Macron's policies, by a liberal urban elite. And then you talk to people who are absolutely terrified that the far right could come into power in France. And that is a terrifying prospect for all sorts of people. It's not just people who come from immigrant backgrounds, but it's people who feel that French values and democracy are going to be eroded. And you've got people who are questioning whether or not they're going to stay in France. You've got people who are scared about what it's going to mean for their kids' education in schools. I think there is no doubt that people, no matter what side of the political spectrum they're on, they are looking at something that they've never seen before in France, that this is an unprecedented situation. And it sort of reminds you a bit of what happened in the United States, where you suddenly had on one side Trump supporters and Biden supporters. And from France, people looked at the US and went, my goodness, look at this country, really divided between, those who are conservative and those who are more liberal. And suddenly you're in France and you feel those deep divisions.